Boy, it's cold in here.
Oh, it's so cold. Mr. Bill, I was thinking of Mr. Bob, never mind.
I watched most of it. I didn't catch Let's go. Hit the button. I'll call the meeting of the General Government and Finance Committee to order at 5:31. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with section 19.83 and 19.84 Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call. We have some special guests tonight. Trustee Warren and Trustee Cutts are sitting in, so thank you very much. And Trustee Jan Miller and myself are regulars, so we're here. And with that, we will move on to item 3, citizen input. Please fill out the yellow sheet, come up to the podium, and keep your comments to approximately 3 minutes.
Good evening, Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane, and just a couple of odds and ends here tonight. I've been contacted by some people to say that the Channel 25 still is intermittent, and I don't know if that's a hardware thing or a people thing or what it is, but it just seems like it doesn't really go away. It would be nice if that could just get fixed once and for all. The next thing is I had mentioned at the Public Works meeting that last year it was brought up about removing fluoride from the water utility, which would save approximately $49,000 a year. And since this is something that is in the news and fluoride is being studied as possibly not being as effective in the ways that people used to think about it, and possibly not even necessary, I'm suggesting that this is something that should be looked into as a cost savings as we go into budgeting for this year. So that's one thing. Last public safety meeting, the siren system was defunded. And in my opinion, it was a little hasty. It may be that that's the right decision to make. However, there was no plan B in place for what needs to happen for people who work outside, who won't have their phones with them or shouldn't have their phones with them because they're working. And so I think that that is something that this group should take a look at, because there needs to be an alternative to the safety of people who do work outside within the village. Not everyone has cell phones either. So I think it was definitely a little hasty to have that removed. Brad, wherever you are. Okay, and the last thing that I have is a question about the budget for this year. I understand that we're going down the road with the accountants for the audit and all that kind of thing, which is great. But I'd like to know what the actual schedule is for talking with the departments. We have made incredible progress over the last few years in moving up the process, and we still should be moving up the process so that we have an actual really good look at the budget in June, at least in draft format, so that there's plenty of time to go out for bids, RFPs, whatever it is, make decisions about what can and cannot stay in the budget. So I'm encouraging that, and I'm asking, when is the actual staff, what is the actual staff schedule for putting together the budget? So thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to come forward?
Melanie Short. Scott Effley, W159 and 10514 Old Farm Road. 3 quick comments. I won't take the 3 minutes. First of all, I read through most of the packet. Saw the interesting thing about the ethics board that our attorney weighed in on, where who were allowing, I know they haven't met in a long time, but they were allowing non-residents or something like that on there. I'm glad that changed. I believe if that's right, he can correct me, is going to just having residents be on a board like that if and when they do meet. In fact, we were letting non-residents that own a business in Germantown on anything that serious is quite troubling. So I'm happy that that's being suggested anyway. I brought this up many times, but the financial reporting, it's okay. We put in 90 pages of check ledgers. I'm a nerd. I go through that stuff and look at it. But my wife's a controller at a manufacturing company, a good sized one, and they do executive summaries for the people that don't want to read 90 pages of check summaries or don't work in the accounting department. They do a consolidated, hey, this is what's going good, this is what's not. They can throw in a balance sheet or something, but I mean, I think that'd be helpful to the people on the board that don't have an accounting background because it's just easy. I don't, every week, every time you meet 400 or 500 pages to go through, that's quite a bit. And I know you skim it, but I think it could just, hey, this is what's going good. This is what's not going good. This is suggestions I make to make it better. I think Matt could do that. You guys only meet once a month, so I don't think it's, I'm putting a bunch of work on anyone's plate. And the final thing is, I know it's going to be discussed, the Public Safety Referendum Restricted Fund. And I know it seems like the statutes say that you can use it for other things. If it's not used by the end of the year, you don't get your hiring done or whatever. I think that is a grave mistake if we go down that road. Because I will assure you, I've talked to at least 15 residents that said they voted for it because they felt it was going to go directly to help hire officers and cover the cost of public safety. So if it's just sitting in the general fund, whether it's used or not, I feel it should roll over because those funds are coming from the taxpayers for public safety. I think they're pretty specific. If you ask anyone, why did you vote for it? I want to feel safe. They want it for public safety. So just leaving it in the fund is a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else would like to come forward for public comment? All right, if not, we will move on to item 4, consent agenda, minutes of January 20th, 2025. Yeah, you sure can.
I'm going to make a comment about Channel 25 because this was brought up a couple of times at tonight's meeting. My staff and I look at Channel 25 throughout the week, and that is something that we did today coming in on Monday morning. I did send an email response to an individual that had reached out inquiring about it. And again, it was addressed tonight. It did go offline ahead of this meeting. And the reason for that is the way that the software is connected. In order for us to go live on standing committees, there is going to be a glitch in Channel 25 in order to make this happen. So that is going to be normal and expected. That is not because anyone is messing with it. That is not because someone is back in the back room without permission playing around with it. It is because we are preparing for this meeting to be live recorded, and that is going to happen each and every time until there is something implemented in its place that you are going to see a glitch because we are making sure that the standing committees are live. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that information. We'll go back to the consent agenda then and the minutes of January 20th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from January 20th, 2025.
Have a second?
I can second, but I wasn't here, so I'll have to abstain from the vote.
You're the only one.
I didn't think you had to be here, did you?
Well,
A second?
It makes sense.
Yeah, they weren't a part of the meeting to approve of them. And they didn't probably.
Okay, I'll second it then. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. I didn't realize that, so. All right, any discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain. Opposed? We're gonna have to postpone them. It's 2-2.
2-2 fails.
It's 2-2, so we will, the minutes aren't approved. We'll have to put it on the next agenda.
People present via WebEx.
I don't think so.
Glad you have us here.
They hope so far.
We can move it to the next agenda, right?
I think we're gonna have that issue with your, I mean, we can do the update. He's, actually, item A is not gonna happen because
Right.
appraiser is not feeling well or approval for, you're not gonna be able to do the, well,
I think I'll vote on the other things.
yeah,
Mhm.
it'll be okay. And were you able to determine if we have trustee Peeper on WebEx? Okay.
Right now, the minutes are not approved, so we will have to deal with that at a future meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to remove that motion.
Okay.
Right.
All right, we'll move on to new business, item A, 2024 interim market update overview. Unfortunately, our assessor is ill and is not available for tonight. So we will have to postpone item A. So I'd like a motion to postpone to the next meeting.
Make a motion to postpone.
I'll
Second,
second.
All right, we have motion to postpone. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item B, approval for a blanket PO not to exceed 150,000 with Capital Data for the purchase and installation of computers for the Windows 11 upgrade.
Yes, so this was already discussed during and approved during the budget discussions. And for 2025, this is Windows 11 is upgrading by August, October at the latest. It needs to be upgraded by, so we're doing an assessment of all the computers at all the different locations. And we came up with about 49 computers-ish. So right now, we're asking to do the purchase through Capital Data. They're going to hold the devices at their location and then set them up and bring them on site. So, yes.
Right? Yeah, so Windows 11 end of life is October.
I think-
Just as a little
yeah.
reference here, I have the same exact issue with my personal job. About the same amount of computers as well. So yes, this is something that needs to be addressed. Trustee Jan Miller.
I have a question, Aaron.
Sure.
You say computers will, I have a computer and it always asks me for the update, and you can update your computer.
You can with some, however, we have
Oh.
devices that aren't eligible for that. So we are upgrading as many computers as we can possibly upgrade, but there are just some that are so old that they just can't go through that upgrade. So those are the only ones that we're considering.
The requirements
this.
are higher for Windows 11. So some of the
Oh.
operating systems and the CPUs aren't.
We have
don't
computers
qualify for
that
an
are like
upgrade.
Windows
Oh, I've seen
7
them.
and, yeah.
I've been at the senior center. And let's see. 50 computers divided by 150,000. What is
So
this?
the 150,000 is not just for the computers. So with the computers, sometimes we need components that won't hook up to older computer, so we have to consider all the accessories that are attached to the computer that won't work with the other computers, as well as Capital Data's time for upgrading the other computers that can be upgraded, and then installing the computers that need to be installed at the 5 different locations.
Are these
Or
primarily?
4. I'm sorry, 4.
I'm sorry, what did you?
4 different locations. I'm sorry.
Okay, 4.
Not the library.
Oh. Senior
Because-
center?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. So senior center, fire department, police department, and here.
here?
Yep.
Okay. And yeah, just forgot my question.
Oh, I'm so
How long will this take?
So I'm gonna have them do it in stages.
Oh.
So everything's set up properly, but as long, there's no end date besides October. So it just has to be done before October.
And then are most of the computers that you're replacing, are you replacing them with laptops?
Not all of them, actually. A majority of ones at the PD are physical desktops.
Desktop?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised.
That's what they've requested, so.
Okay,
But yes, many of them, especially here at Village Hall, will be laptops that can be
Laptops,
moved
okay.
around. Mhm.
all right.
Trustee Cutts.
so the 150,000 not to exceed, you're just planning for all possible scenarios of any equipment and things for upgrades, but you're not necessarily going to use that full amount, correct?
Correct. It's more likely going to be underneath that amount, but yeah, I highly doubt it will be over that amount. But
Thank you.
yes. Oh, sorry.
Did
Go
did
ahead.
you get, did you get an approximate bid on each of the computers? Like the desktop versus the
Yeah, so
laptops?
so Capital Data and I have been discussing it and discussing how many we're going to need and an average cost of how much it's going to be. Now, granted, those costs can change, but I don't think they're going to change greatly from the time we did that analysis.
So what was the range? Was that in here? 120.
The range?
The range of pricing on a computer?
No,
Was it?
no. No, but I can tell you right now, a typical setup is about 2,500,
Oh.
maybe a little less, depending on what type of computer you get.
Mhm. Okay.
All right, committee, need a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend that we approve the open PO not to exceed 150,000 with capital data for the Windows 11 capital project.
Second.
We have motion to approve. Any further discussion? You know, was this borrowing capital? Okay. Shoot. There's something else and now I forgot.
That's a good question.
All right, any further discussion? If not, this has to go to village board, right? For that, so
Yes,
that was
correct.
my other question. So this is a motion actually to move this to village board for and recommend approval. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. All right, with that, we'll move on to item C, an ordinance to amend section 1.064 of the Germantown Municipal Code relating to the membership of and vote required for actions taken by the Ethics Board. We have our attorney Sajak is here to discuss further.
Sure. So just very briefly, this is a proposed amendment to the provisions of the village's ethics code. As we received a complaint that I think all of you are aware of, it's been mentioned from time to time in the last meeting, I think. We've examined the code, identified some deficiencies or unusual language that was in there. One of which was the language that Mr. Heffley pointed out. That we have provisions in there that allow for non-residents to be a member of the body. That is fairly unusual for most bodies within an organization like this. Where we do see that type of language sometimes is on committees that have very specialized knowledge requirements that, you know, maybe having the guy who works in that industry but maybe isn't the resident might benefit from it. But certainly the ethics board is not one of those types of bodies. So the first change is that it just gets rid of that. And then the second change, as we dug into the ethics code some more to deal with the complaint, this is, at least in my tenure, the first time that the ethics board will be meeting. I think I've heard from others that even well before my tenure, it's been, you know, probably 18 or 20 years since the last time the ethics board has met. So kind of dug into the code to take a look at some things. And actually, Ms. Smythe was nice enough to point out an unusual vote requirement within the code as well, where it specifically calls out a vote of 4-1 in order to take any action. That's unusual for a couple reasons. One is that typically you want to bake into your code a vote requirement that reflects you know, the possibilities that you might have vacancies or absences, that kind of thing. The other piece of it is that it's very unusual to see a very specific, you know, number, you know, 4-1, you know, typically it's, you know, 3/4 of the body or one half of the quorum, or, you know, some reference to a percentage as opposed to a specific number. The specific number becomes problematic in two ways. One is that there's always the question when you have a 4-1 vote, does that mean that if you have something that isn't you know, imposition of some sort of discipline, which requires a unanimous vote under the code, that if you're dealing with anything else, can you have a unanimous vote and pass it? There's certainly an argument that could be made that a 4-1 vote means that at least one of those people needs to vote no in order to take that particular action. The other reason that it's a little bit unusual again is that it doesn't take into account the fact that vacancies sometimes do occur, whether it's by virtue of the fact that there's just a vacancy that's there. Sometimes a member of the ethics board, for example, might have a conflict of interest and they would need to abstain from, participating in any particular vote, or they may just not be available on the night that the meeting takes place. So now if I don't have all 5 members of the ethics board present, now I'm, messing with, potential to vote, requirement in ways that maybe weren't intended when the code was drafted in that way. The 4-1 really equates to 3/4 vote of the board, which is why we then just changed the language to reflect that. And then we also keyed that to the members that are actually on the board. So we would take into consideration vacancies as part of that consideration as well. So those are the 2 proposed changes for this, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, they make sense. One of the things I saw though is a minimum of 3 members are present, shall be present for a meeting to take place or to conduct business. So at a 3/4, that means it's unanimous in order to approve that topic, subject, whatever it is.
Correct. And that's one of the examples of where having that kind of baked in vote, having the percentage gives you that flexibility to adjust. Obviously, at some point, if you only have 3 members there, for example, that's going to require a unanimous vote to do anything, which is fine. But at least we're accounting for that in a way that's adjusting based on the actual membership, as opposed to, if you leave the 4-1, for example, and you only have 3 people that are there, you can't take any action, including arguably even to adjourn the meeting. Which, certainly, becomes interesting as well. So.
All right, thank you. Committee, Trustee Cutts.
So just for clarification, because when I'm looking at ethics board, there's only 3 people on the board, so you can't get a 3/4 vote with 3 people. You do like a 2/3. So does that adjust to, or how do you figure that?
Oh, that's what I was just saying.
Oh,
You
yep,
need a
yep.
unanimous vote.
Yeah,
in
so
order to
anytime
pass
you see that type of vote that's there, you just take the membership and then you divide by that number and then you round up. So if it's, 2.67, for example, you round up to 3. So if you only have 3 members that are present, all 3 members need to vote in
Same.
the affirmative in order to do it. That's how you get your 3/4 to do that.
Okay.
Jan, you got Trustee
Yep.
Jan Miller?
I just have a question. I went back to the village board meeting from April of 2024, and I noticed that there were no add-ons to the ethics board. And my comment is this: regardless how often a board meets, vacancies on boards, committees and commissions should be addressed. And I find it odd. There weren't any, in the code, it says there are 5 members. In addition to that, there's 2 alternatives. So whose job is it to watch the committees and make sure that they're filled?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, for most positions within the village, that falls to the village president. He's the one that for almost every position appoints the individual, subject to confirmation by the village board. I do typically see it to be more of a body-wide thing that, hey, I've got somebody that's expressed interest in being on a board, Mr. President or Miss President, do you have somewhere that we could put this individual? And, making those types of suggestions. We here in Germantown actually are fairly fortunate. We don't have a lot of vacancies on our boards and commissions on a year-to-year basis. We have, a pretty full slate of members on most of our bodies, which is unusual these days. It's hard to find volunteers, quite honestly. But certainly when we get volunteers, they generally tell us that they want to be on bodies that are active and do things. They don't want to just, volunteer for the sake of having their name on something and then not do something. So if they're given a choice, would you like ethics board or would you like some other board? That individual is almost always going to say, I'd like to sit on that other board because we're going to do things. So the ethics board does tend to be the hardest one to fill. And that's true of all of our communities that we represent, in all honesty. It's just, they don't do anything.
How many communities do you represent?
We have 4 of them that we do the general legal work for. And then, we've done others that, where I've, on special project basis, for example, where I get called in to help on an ethics board type issue for one example. And so, of the probably 6 or 7 codes that I've looked at, and bodies that I've looked at, I would say probably all of them have a vacancy, of some nature. The one exception to that is actually Mequon. And the reason that the ethics board in Mequon is different, in my opinion, is that the individual seats are actually filled by the district representatives themselves. So each district has one person that they nominate. And so there's a little bit more of an incentive to get some fill it, because it's one of the few things that individual can do. So they tend not to have many vacancies, but where it's a vacancy that's done by the village president or the mayor of the community, it's harder to fill, in my experience.
Mequon has the village board council members or trustees fill the positions in there is like, really,
For the ethics board, yep,
only the ethics board,
correct.
not other boards or committees?
I think it's just ethics board. I could confirm that for you, but I'm pretty sure it's just the ethics board is the only one, and that's based on each district, that each alderman basically gets to appoint one member, and then the mayor appoints the odd member to give them an odd number of votes.
The like at large, or just the odd one? Okay, so do they have 4 districts?
No, they have 8 districts, and then the mayor is the 9th, so you have 9 members on their ethics board.
Oh, well, we have 9 members, but we only have 4 districts.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, certainly, if this body wanted to, suggest that type of change, for the ethics board, we certainly can, bring back changes to talk about and discuss. That's certainly an option.
I think that would be worth looking at. Maybe then there wouldn't be a gap.
Yeah, it certainly could
Because
be.
Quite frankly, we're not invited to do that.
I don't know about that. I suggest people all the time for boards and committees.
Well,
You don't need
I
an
do,
invitation.
but this would be in the Muni code. You know what I'm saying?
You mean if
you see
each
what
district would
Mequon-
appoint?
Yeah. That's just a little bit different. I understand what you're saying.
All right, we don't have a motion yet, so I would need a motion to approve the changes to the ordinance or the amended ordinance.
I'll make a motion to recommend adoption of the ordinance to amend section 1.064 of the Germantown Municipal Code related to the membership of and vote required for actions taken by the Ethics Board as presented, or such other action as the committee deems appropriate.
Second.
All right, a motion, any further discussion? I think they're nice cleanups to this. It makes a lot of sense to make these changes, so. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Great, thank you. Item D, another ordinance, an ordinance to amend section 12.26 of the Germantown Municipal Code related to weights and measures license.
Sure. So this one and actually the next one both came from the clerk's office, a recommendation from them in terms of cleaning up some of the code provisions as it relates to the 2 bodies. The first one related to the Board of Zoning Appeals is a change basically to reflect that the village clerk, Ms. Ott, doesn't typically do zoning related things. Whereas we have an administrative coordinator within the planning department that does. They go to plan commission. They're very familiar with the terms, the terminology, the process, that type of thing. And so the change here just changes the secretary to be either the administrative coordinator, or if that position.
Order, we're on the weights and measures one.
Oh, you're right. I looked at it wrong. My bad. So same beginning, again, came from the clerk's office. And it was really designed as kind of an offset between the two, that we're going to change one here to one department. We're going to give up over here in the other department. As it relates to the weights and measures, really all of the business licensing within the community, within the village, is through the clerk's office. We're not entirely sure why the planning department was the one that was kind of tasked with handling the weights and measures license at the time that was created many years ago. But that is the current code, and so the code amendment just changes that from the community development department to the village clerk's office.
All right, committee.
I'll make a motion to the village board to recommend approval of an ordinance to amend section 12.26 of the Germantown Municipal Code related to the weights and measures license.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion, discussion. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we can go on to item E, an ordinance to amend section 1.30, paragraph 2, subparagraph B of the Germantown Municipal Code related to the Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Everything that I just said, we're just changing it from the clerk's office to the administrative coordinator. And then in the event that the administrative coordinator's position is vacant, that would then fall to the clerk, or the clerk could designate somebody else to fill that position.
Got it. Trustee Jan Miller.
I have a question. Who's the administrative coordinator?
That is, Donna, help me out. That's Deb. Yes, thank you.
Remick, he's in
Oh,
Community development.
okay. That makes more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, committee, need a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend to the village board the approval of an ordinance to amend section 1.30 paren 2 paren B of the Germantown Municipal Code related to Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve the ordinance amendment. Any discussion? Any other discussion? No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Go on to item F. Place revenue from the 2024 public safety referendum in a restricted fund to be used only for police and fire expenses. Who's starting this one?
Sure, I can take a start. So this item was submitted by trustee Jan Miller regarding the referendum back in April to hire additional police and firefighters. Her request was to move the funds that were designated for police and fire into quote restricted fund only to be used for police and fire. While I understand your intent, the mechanism you're looking for isn't, I wouldn't use a restricted fund, as those things don't exist in local governments.
Okay.
As laid out in the memo by Administrator Krecklow, the proper procedure would be to look at, so let's say we get through 2025 and they hired, 8 of the 10 firefighters. At the year end, we would take a look at the surplus. We would expect then there to be a surplus for those vacancies. And as part of the year end process, we would restrict that cash within the general fund to only be used for, whatever the board designated it to be, in this case, police and fire. Proper accounting procedures doesn't allow us to create a quote restricted fund for these types of activities. The main types of funds within local governments are general funds, enterprise funds, proprietary funds, special revenue funds, those types of things. So I think the intent would be at the 2025 year-end close would be to look to see if they were able to fill all those positions. If not, what would that have cost? and then restrict that cash as part of the 25 year-end process.
So question, in reading this document from Administrator Krecklow, it says that it's already restricted. You can only use it for what the referendum was approved for.
Correct. And that was
Um,
also part of the 2025 budget. So we budgeted those positions using those dollar amounts.
Right. And as you mentioned, you know, if something wasn't filled, there should be a surplus of that. We could use it for overtime, for paid on call, paid on premise, for other items within the police and fire budget. Is
Correct.
that-
So hypothetically, if, let's say if use the police department, you know, hired one of the 4 individuals, we would expect overtime to be higher than we had anticipated, based on the assumption that those positions were vacant. So there would be a gap in, you know, budgeted expenses for overtime with the actual overtime. And the public safety referendum could, in 2025 only, you know, cover that cost.
And that would be an approval of the village board in order to utilize those funds for that purpose.
We would likely do a budget amendment, correct? Increasing overtime expenses.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Okay, I brought this up because if this, the referendum money, where does it sit now?
So all those funds are within the general fund.
Okay, and is it a separate line item?
The revenue, like the I'm gonna round up, the
One-
1.5 million. No, so if you look at the 2025 budget, you'll see property tax revenue, which shows the total dollar amount of
Right.
12 million or 11 million and change.
Doesn't it go into the police and fire fund divided
On the
by
expense
10?
side, you see the expense side. All the revenue goes into the general property tax revenue. On the
Right.
expense side, you'll see where those salaries are budgeted.
Okay. Now, when Mr. Krecklow, who can't defend himself because he's not here, made the comment that that these funds could be used, as Trustee Rick Miller said, in overtime, et cetera. But if you look at the tape, it was a resounding no. It should be for new hires. So I have this conflict. It should be for new hires. That's part of my
Mhm.
my point. And because if you hire somebody, if we have, let's say, to your example, we have 8 new hires.
Mhm.
We're allotted 10 for this is for the fire.
Right.
And it would reduce, if we added people, it would reduce over time. And so you know, how do you measure it? So I don't think that the funds should be used for overtime. I think we would be commingling it, and it wouldn't be exactly what on the referendum, that the understanding of the residents that approved it, that voted for it, actually, you know, they want to see new hires.
Mhm.
So if it's only new hires, how do we know what's left on that expense line for the new hires? What's left that we can surplus for new hires to get it done by 2026?
So what we do is we would we would track the hiring of those individuals. So I'm gonna use police just because there's only 4. We're gonna track the hiring of those individuals, and we do an analysis of if they were hired, let me say, March 1st, what is the 3 months of salary or the 2 months of salary that they weren't paid? What is that dollar amount? And that's what we'd use as the basis for restricting that cash at the end of the year. I would make the point though, if for example, we only hired 2 police officers and overtime, I'm gonna use a higher number than probably it would be, is $100,000 over. $100,000 is going to come from the general fund, regardless of if it's from the restricted cash or just cash reserves, because we have to pay that overtime, regardless of if it's from the referendum money or just the general cash reserves. It makes no difference as it relates to the general fund. It's all pooled cash.
But it should be noted that these are the people you hired. These are the expenditures because that's where it is. And if we already have a budget in 2025 for
Mhm.
overtime,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
So we should keep those numbers as they are. And then if it goes over, then evaluate it at the end of the year.
Mhm.
But my concern is that you have to wait till 2025 is closed.
Well, you wouldn't know if there is a surplus or deficit in the general fund. So for example, let's say there is a deficit in the general fund in 2025 of $100,000. In that scenario, there's no cash to restrict. That there wasn't any surplus in 2025. It's more important looking at any individual department and their budget is to look at the general fund as a whole as it relates to, cash balances and surpluses and things like that. If, for example, the clerk's budget is under by $100,000, the clerk doesn't get $100,000 next year to play with. That falls down to the general cash reserves and is used, as the village board, dictates. Another example with this line of thinking is if we hire all 10 firefighters and then, 5 firefighters from the previous, I'll say, 5 firefighters that we already had for the last 10 years retire, that cash isn't then restricted for fire department. Those savings go into the general fund. As it relates to the general fund, it's all property tax revenue. The way we show that we're spending it on what we said we would spend it for is in the 2025 budget when we budgeted 10 firefighters and 4 police officers. If for some reason we didn't hire anybody, that'd be a problem, and that'd be worth considering. But nitpicking each personnel over 2025, what do we do in 2026 if 2 of those officers, I don't know, resign, retire, or leave, go somewhere else? Are we going to look each year at those new positions and restrict cash every year? Those are questions to consider when restricting cash in the general fund.
I think the big difference is this is referendum money and not our regular tax levy, right?
So it is all now just considered tax levy.
Correct.
So as it
But
relates to the audit, to the general fund, to the AGFR, it's all going to flow down to the bottom line of the general fund, whether there's a surplus or a deficit.
1 second.
Yeah, as it relates to any type of auditing or budgeting, it's all the same pot of money in the general fund. There's not a separate line, not a separate line in the tax bill that says referendum money. There's not a separate line that we report to the state anymore that says it's levy money or referendum money. It's all just general fund property tax.
This topic is also on the agenda tonight at Village Board, and I would like to know more, but at the end of the year, when we have excess funds or et cetera, it's up to the village board to decide what to do with those. And to me, this is just another line item in that excess, assuming there's going to be an excess, because it's very rare that we have a full department of firefighters and a full department of police officers. And at that point, we would have to decide as a village board what to do with this money, if we want to use it for overtime, if we want to use it for something else within those departments, or we want to give it back. That's always an option. So I would like to hear more about it at the village board meeting and what our options are on that. But Trustee Bob Warren had a question or a comment.
So for me, it comes down to 2 sentences. That being, existing budgetary controls ensure revenue from the referendum cannot be used other than intended in the referendum. That money cannot be used for any other purpose, police and fire salaries. And to dig into the weeds to say, well, the number of new hires is different than what we were saying, I don't care about that. It's up to the police to decide what's the best use of those dollars of that referendum, whether it's trying to hire all the people or let's apply it to overtime on some existing staff. The end game is that they're improving safety because of this referendum. They're managing it their own way. So I don't even know why we're talking about this, to be honest with you. Those 2 sentences right there cover it. Why are we digging into the weeds?
Trustee Cutts.
Well, I understand where Trustee Miller's coming from. I know this came up at a previous meeting, and Administrator Krecklow mentioned if it wasn't used, it would just go on the general fund, and everybody was like, whoa, 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 what does that mean? So I think we do need clarification on this to understand and to just put it in the general fund. If it isn't used and we're moving it around, goes against the referendum. And for me, I would question all future referendums and how I vote. Because when I voted for this, I voted for what it said, not knowing it could be used elsewhere, because we're already 7 police down. Chief Merton said at Public Safety last time, we're 3 down from last year, and they haven't gotten any of the 4 for this year. So you could end up with a lot left, and I don't want it just commingled and then shifted around elsewhere when the public voted for it for personnel.
So-
That's my concern.
So the question is the audit trail, because as trustee Warren pointed out, it can't be used for anything else. It's part of the general fund, but it can't be used for anything else. So it's the audit trail on that portion of the general fund is what's in question. And I think we will get more answers at village board tonight for that. That makes sense?
Yep, and just to be clear, these funds are already within the general fund. That's where the police budget lies. All these funds, stay within the general fund. We don't typically commingle funds like that.
Right, but just as I work in accounting, I know you can do journal entries and move money around. That's the thing that,
Well, that's what I'm
Concerns
saying.
me.
Yeah, it's got to be the audit trail has to be there in order to track this
Right.
portion of the general fund. So, okay, anything else with this? Like I said, will be a topic on the village board tonight. If not, we can move on to the reports. Item A, accounts payable. There's several AP ledgers. Any questions?
Oh. Yes.
Trustee Jan Miller.
All right. Let me turn the page. So Matt, I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
So, I did go through the check run. It was very interesting. So, first of all, we have this really nice Tyler Munis report. And on the top, it says cash account, that's the account number. And then there's the company name, and then it says remit, and there's 4 zeros. What is that supposed to be? Is that, and where is our check number? This is a check run, correct?
Let me take a look here.
Okay.
As related to the remit, I don't know what those 4 zeros stand for. I'm not sure what those 4 zeros stand for in that column.
Is this, oh, okay. Is this number that says invoice check total and about the, I don't know, 5th column? That one. That's the invoice number
Correct.
that we get from them. That we get from the other company
Correct.
that
Yep.
wants their money.
Correct.
Where is our check number? How do we follow this?
Sure.
Voucher?
but that's not a check.
To me, it's the voucher number.
To you, it's the voucher number?
Those look like our check numbers.
Okay, can you verify that, please?
Yep.
Voucher check. Okay, I'm trying to understand these more.
Mhm.
And then when we get to the budget, remind me for you to show me where the general fund total is. And where does the, oh, so I'm just going to go page by page. I found this interesting, check numbers. Okay, on page 63 of 553, there are several entries for Wesolowski, Reidenbach, Reidenbach.
Okay.
Which there's about 9 of them. And the total is $20,886.96.
Okay.
So why are we getting so many in January? There's and there are some that are project administration, police administration, and village board. So can you, these are all from Attorney Sajak.
Yep. I'll do my best to answer some of those questions there. So the different departments, so there's village board, there's police. If he does work for the TIDS, we'll charge him to the TIDS. It really depends on what work he's doing. The ones that go to the police department are for municipal court. So if he did work for municipal court, that's where we charge those. For general village work, we charge it to the village board budget line. And then if there's any work for any of the tax increment districts, we charge it there.
Okay. And, but I looked these up and you sent me copies, and these are actually invoices from March and April of 2024.
Okay.
Why are we getting these now?
I don't know. Either the village attorney forgot about them or fell behind, or there could be a plethora of reasons. But they were submitted in January, so that's when we account coded them and cut the check.
So I want to make a note of that because that's almost a year later that we're getting billed. How do we account for this in our, this was probably budgeted for 2024.
It would have been charged to 2024. It was still charged back to 24. We typically, if you just think about the timing for invoices for any work done, let's say in December, most of those invoices come in January and we charge it back to the prior fiscal year. So we did the same for these invoices.
Yep, I find that a little disturbing that we have to wait that long. But that's me. And I would think that they'd want their money. And then what was do you remember, I believe it was last month or 2 months ago, we changed the Muni code for the village administrator. We increased the check writing capability. Was it up to?
So the village administrator, excuse me, I had to get my dollars amount right here. I believe the village administrator was up to 15,000. 15,000 to 25,000 was committee. Anything over 25,000 required village board approval.
Okay. And when we if the village of Germantown went out for an additional TID, where would that money come from? Would you know? Or is that an Eller's question or administrator?
So if the village created another TID, I'm gonna say the revenues initially for that TID would come from bond proceeds. Then following that, it would come from the tax increment that the TID developed or generated.
Okay.
But initially it'd be bond proceeds.
Okay. And do you have it was asked in the citizen comment schedule for the department budget meetings? Are you prepared to?
No, we haven't done that yet.
Okay.
I guess I'll make the comment that I think if we would like to start the budget process earlier, we certainly can. I don't think that starting with the department head meetings in June is the right way to go, simply because most of them don't get their revenue projections until August or September. I think what we would like to do and would be more prudent would be to start maybe in May or June at the village board of setting priorities and goals and where they would like to see, funds allocated. That makes more sense than starting with department heads in June, simply because they don't have enough, knowledge on any of their revenues that they'll get for 2026. Certainly from the state, those don't come out until August, September.
And something came to mind. there was another sheet in the check. There were a bunch of people that got tax refunds.
Mhm.
And then I think in your email you said they overpaid.
Yep, typically, what happens, either folks double pay, maybe a husband pays it, then wife pays it, or wife pays it, then husband pays it. So we issue them that money back. If a mortgage company overpays, if they pay the full
Oh,
escrow,
sure.
we'll cut them a check back. There's a variety of reasons why folks overpay.
Okay.
They wrote their check wrong, happens a good amount.
So are the taxes generated from Tyler Munis?
No, those are generated through the county website or the county portal.
Oh, that's right,
Ascend.
the county. I knew it wasn't. Okay, on the check writing, you have Ellers. So we've done a bunch of Ellers things apparently. And this month we paid Ellers $28,750. And it looks like work on TIDS 6, 7, 8, and 9. Are these reports?
I don't have that check run in front of me. What that either most likely is, it could be for the annual review board at the end of the year that Ailers helps prepare. They do it for that. If there was any amendments to any of the TIDs, they help prepare that materials and bill for that. Those are the two that come to mind.
Okay, there's one that was done in November, and then there were two that were done in December. But it was repeated. That's what I didn't understand. In November, they looked at 6, 7, 8, and 9, and then they went back and they looked at it again. There's two different charges. Can you look into that?
Yep.
That was page 76 of 553. And then there's other legal people on here.
Okay.
We use a lot of other legal departments. This was Van Bryson. Do we get publications? That's
for,
Village Board Legal.
That's for
That
employment.
makes me think it's for, yeah, they typically do some employment.
Employment.
It could be for negotiations with the unions. It might be the law firm that's
been here
assisting the
longer,
village
Rick.
with that.
Thanks. Okay. And those were my questions that I had on the payable.
Okay. Matt, one question. Do we do
Mhm.
any ACH payments yet? Or is it all checks?
We'll do ACH every once in a while. We don't do it on a broad scale. We've done it here and there. Some folks are starting to request or ask if we can do that.
I mean, it is a
Yeah.
small money saver at the end, but
Yeah.
there has to be controls in place in order to do it.
Mhm. Yeah, I've only had, I think, 2 vendors reach out asking for ACH. It's certainly something we can do and might start transitioning to. It's just lower on the priority list.
Sure. I'm guessing Tyler Munis has a
Mhm.
ACH.
Apt.
Yep.
Yep.
Or prepares an ACH
Yep.
file.
So it is possible.
Yes.
Well, if we had it and advertised it, maybe we'd get more people.
That's true. I know,
We'd get our
Well,
money faster.
I think we have to be, the staff has to be
Trained.
able to do it.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it's just a matter of setting it up and
Mhm.
and testing it with each vendor, make sure we have all their bank information.
We'll move on to the budget to actual.
So I included year-to-date 2024 and then year-to-date 2025 as well.
And you had one question you said,
the
remind me when we got to the budget.
I just opened that. I was sick. Year to date. So
I think you were asking about taxes, right?
taxes and also the
It's the second
code
page,
description.
page two of the budget.
2. Okay. Are there any things that we should be aware of that are different, Matt?
We're talking the 2024 budget or the 2025 budget?
I'm on 2025, actually, year to
Okay.
date.
Let me pull that one up. Excuse me. The only thing I would say about the 2025 year-to-date budget, and I mentioned it in my director's report, is that we've completed the tax collection for 2025, at least the villages portion. What you'll see in the 2025 year-to-date is only the January settlement. We wrapped up the February settlement last week, and we'll be wiring the taxing jurisdictions their portion of the funds tomorrow. At that point, we'll do a journal entry showing the total amount of taxes the villages collected. In the 2025, it's only through December 31st.
Oh, I see. Okay.
General question.
Mhm. Yep.
These are all highlighted, but it's username and password protected. Is that how it should be, or should we be able to highlight those and get into more detail?
So there is the functionality to have you folks drill into the account detail. That is something we haven't set up, and I know there's been discussion at the committee level that you folks would like to see that. That's certainly something we can do, and if you folks remind me again, I'll make that a priority to get you guys access to that. The one thing is I just need to test the settings to make sure you can see what's in there, but you can't go around and change things. That'd be
We don't have permission.
that'd be a
So
problem.
to set the
Utility payment. I can drill down. What do I see?
You'll see, it'll take you into what we call account inquiry, which will show you, the budget, the year to date, any encumbrances, things like that. You could click into the actual and it would list all of the entries that have been made into that account. So all of the invoices charged to that account, any encumbrances to that account, any journal entries to that account. You'll probably see more than you need to or care to, but that level of detail is there.
I think you answered my question.
Sure you want it.
I would care to see it.
I would like to see it.
Meg would like to see.
I would.
I would like to see it. Rick's always asked for
Rick
it.
would
I
love
have
to see it.
asked, so.
Yeah.
Rick would
Yeah.
love to
He
see it.
knows,
That's
he knows
gotta
it's
be
on my,
It's on
Gotta
your
be
bucket list.
2025 list.
Look into it and tell me.
all right, anything else for the budget? Otherwise, we'll move on to payroll. Payroll's usually no questions, really.
Not really.
All right, we'll move on to item D, contracts.
We're slowly but surely cleaning up this contract report. As contracts close out in 2023 and 2024, I've been slowly removing them. I'm planning on keeping any 2025 contract regardless of if it's open or closed, just to show that, we had this contract in 2025 and it's been closed out. I'm currently working with departments to close out the 2024 or roll them over into 2025 if there's still work to be done on that contract.
At the end, do you put what the contract, because we added a bunch of columns. And so they have an amount that you anticipate for contracts. And then when you close it out, you show if there's a balance left, what portion has been used of the,
No, so what happens when you close the contract, whatever hasn't been used just goes back into, available budget. It doesn't show any difference. It just unencumbers those funds. So if there was a budget of $10,000 and we encumbered $5,000 for a specific contract, if we only used 2,500, that 2,500 would go back into their budget. We're just unencumbering them.
they have no line item?
It would go back into whatever line item that contract was originally
Okay.
in. Yep.
Could it be used the next year for that contract? Some of the contracts, the same companies we do
So
contract
what
with?
would happen? What would happen if again, it comes back to the general fund. If there's $100,000 of a contract that we didn't use and everything else being equal, that $100,000 would roll down into the general fund reserved as a surplus for the general fund.
So the ones that you had on here, like for this year, $997, and then you paid it out, it's a zero balance, that'll just fall off at the end of the year. You'll leave it on for the full year.
That's what I was planning on doing unless the committee felt differently. I just wanted to show that, we had this 2025 contract, and it's closed.
But I'd like to know what the amount is that if you start with 100,000 and you only use 95,000, you got 5,000. What's getting rolled out into the general fund?
So it's not necessarily getting rolled back into the general fund. If in this case, if we had a contract for $10,000 and it ended up only being $8,000, 2,000 would
goes in.
just go back into the budget.
Oh,
It would just be available in the budget again.
what part of the budget? Just
What-
for these contracts?
Yeah, whatever line that contract was charged to. So if it was, charged to auditing
stays in the
services, and
line.
yep, it stays within that line. Yep.
And can we access it in the following year? Like 20, if there was,
Nope.
What-
So it would just fall down
That's
to general
what-
fund reserves.
that's what I mean.
yep.
Just falls down.
Yep, it'd fall back down to general fund reserves.
So I'd like to know of all the contracts, let's say we have 25 contracts.
Mhm.
What is the balance that isn't used in those contracts? What's falling into the general fund? That's,
Of this list in 24 or just in general? Because in a sense, if it's under,
All-
it just goes
all
back
the-
into it doesn't fall down to the general fund. It goes back into their budget in that same fiscal
Okay.
year.
okay. So then it's, how do we know when you do the 2025?
Mhm.
We did the 2024, there's $5,000 left over. It's for, let's take an example. I just want to make sure I'm following this right. DPW, oh, how about information technology wellness? Okay, we get 5,000 left. And so how does it show up? It just shows up on 2024 when we rebook the contract?
So I don't know that specific example. So, but if you pull up the 24 budget or the 25 budget, whatever one you want to choose, there's a column that is titled encumbered/requisitions.
Okay.
So essentially what that column is saying is there's a contract or purchase order that hasn't been paid yet, but has been entered and we're waiting to pay it. If for some reason that contract becomes less, those dollars go back into the available budget column. And so they'll have, $2,000 back in their available budget to use in that fiscal year.
In the fiscal year.
Correct.
But I'm talking about is,
But for the following year, you just
Yeah.
need to budget a little different then. So if you only spent, if it's a $10,000 contract and you spent 5, then next year you may only need 5,000 for that contract, right?
that's what needs to
So
be.
that's part of our budget process at the end, when we start going through that. It says, oh, we didn't use all this money this year. We may not need it
But a lot of the,
next year.
but a lot of the numbers for the budget, I have noticed, are taken from the previous year's budget. They don't necessarily move that much
It all depends, yeah.
Yeah.
regardless of we don't know what they used.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of
Yeah, we do,
using
but-
this is that, in MSI or in the past, we weren't able to track contracts that way. Where in this way, we can track contracts by GL line and look at these dollar
Yeah.
amounts and see year over year. 2024 is the first year we've done that. So as we build up, more information, we'll have a better understanding of what we actually need in that line.
Okay.
I have a question, Matt.
Mhm.
Yep.
On Wolf Paving, the top line, the contract was approved in 24 for the 24 road program for 1.27 million. We've used 961,000. There's still 311 in there. Is that scheduled to be used? That will go back into the road program?
Nope. So in the case of the road program, so those dollars are typically pretty hard set unless there's a change order. It could be they're wrapping up some of the 2024 program. Maybe they didn't finish it by
Didn't
the end
bill?
of the year. Or there's some retainers that still need to be paid out, but all those numbers will be spent.
Okay.
All right, after contracts, we have the director's update.
So included in your packet is my update for the last month. I don't have it up in front of me, but let me grab it real quick. So like I said earlier, the village completed their tax collection process. Overall, we collected 71% of all the taxes that were levied, just slightly lower than we did last year. In 2023, we collected 71.85. This year, we collected 71 flat.
Matthew, is that typical percent collected?
Yeah, we usually receive 2/3, maybe a little bit more each year, and then we get the rest in August once the county settles up.
It all gets reconciled, plus you can pay in 2 payments.
Right.
Yep.
So,
So then the county collects, or the county, in August, the county will issue us a check for our portion, regardless of what they collected. You know, they take on the burden of paying us our total, and then they settle up with the folks who haven't paid any of their taxes yet.
They have a war chest.
In addition, looking at some of the other things as part of my director's report, we sent out roughly 425 W-2s and 62 1099s that were set up at the end, or that were to be sent out by the end of January. I know there's been some talk about some of the W-2s. What happened for some of those individuals is any election worker who worked or earned more than $600, their W-2 showed incorrect gross earnings. That's because in Munis, what we tried to do is set up 2 different pay codes. One for those who earned under $600, we don't withhold any taxes for them. We're not required to withhold any taxes, so we don't. For folks who earn over $600, there are tax withholdings. So we had 2 different pay codes. When we processed the W-2s, it only looked at the taxable wages, so it didn't include the first 600. So what we did is we issued new W-2s to those folks and then mailed out W-2Cs, which those folks should have received. They probably wouldn't have gotten today because the post office was closed, but we'll receive early this week.
How many?
There's 28. And those were the election workers who earned more than $600. In addition, we held interviews last week for our open utility billing clerk position. Overall, we had 15 applicants and interviewed 5 candidates. I'll be meeting with my staff tomorrow to send an offer to one of the applicants. We
nice.
get those on board because we have first quarter billing. That process starts beginning of March. So
Do you have 1 or 2 openings?
there's one opening in the finance department.
Crazy, 15 applicants?
That's good.
Well,
Surprising.
for us, but why so many applicants? It's just, what is this business?
It's a great job. You should apply.
Okay. I will.
WRS system's a great system.
Okay.
I did put a general fund year-end update here, so we're finalizing the general fund closeout. We still have a few remaining journal entries to do, moving some of the expenses and revenues out of 25 and back into 24. So we'll do a full financial report to GGF in March. Because I know I'm going to get the question, are we going to have a surplus or deficit? We're projecting a small surplus, somewhere at, don't quote me, somewhere in the like $50,000 to $100,000 range.
Careful. Be careful. We've gone down that road before.
Right. So we'll provide a financial report to GGF at the March meeting. And then as always, I've continued to put on the year-end close and audit update. Those dates still haven't changed. Baker Tilly will be on site at the end of March, early April to do their on-site work to prepare for those reports that are due in May and June.
And then, question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We were talking about a new audit company, remember?
Yep. So we currently are under contract with Baker Tilly for the 2024 audit. I think one of the things we'll either bring to committee in March. It's gonna be a long March GGF meeting, just so everybody knows.
Start that.
Are a list of priorities that we would like the committee to set for the finance department of, we can do all of these things. Which ones would you prefer we do, first and set the priority for the finance department in that way? One of them being an RFP for a new audit firm. So, great.
All right, thank you. That's the last thing on the agenda for tonight. So we will adjourn at 6:45. I thank our guest trustees for filling in tonight.
Next meeting?
Oh, next meeting, yeah, when is the next
I think
meeting?
it's the 17th.
Should be the 17th of March.
17. Isn't that
17th of March,
St.
5:30.
Patty's Day?
We're green.